Aloha, I'm Dr. Sasha Lesson, and I'd like to talk to you about the Anunnaki dominator mindset, the things that our makers trained us and to do and showed us what to do and what they built into our genes. We're going to take a look at the blessings, the curses, and challenges of the geneticists who made us. Who are these geneticists who made us? They're the Anunnaki. They're great big guys, 12 to 18 foot when they first started coming here. They came to Earth. You can see how big they are by the guy on the right. That's their space port chief, and some regular sized, 5'4" type human beings after they created us as their slave race. How do we know about these Anunnaki? Well, my teacher, Zecharia Sitchin, translated what the Akkadians left. These are people in ancient Sumer or Iraq that they said were dictated to them by these big guys who they called the gods. And they gave us all kinds of things. Some of them were good, some of them were junk, and some of them were promises. What they did give us that seems to have benefited us, or they gave us our life, our genes, they gave us science stuff, some technology stuff, they gave us the stuff we like to eat, as well as livestock, they gave us psychedelics, and they gave us a certain kind of social structure, one that was ruled by a mindset called dominator consciousness. We're going to look at some of, first of all, the perks, the good things they gave us. Of course, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, since they created us. And we'll look at how they did that in increments. The first big increment 300,000 years ago, there was one set of Adam and Eves. And then another 100,000 years later, there's another set of so-called Adam and Eves. And then there's other incursions from the Nephilim and the descendants of Noah. But we'll get into those briefly. How this came about that we had our existence as a species was all engineered. The Nibirans had come, they came from their planet Nibiru to get gold on Earth, and they were digging gold, and they had volunteers that were working in the underground, digging the gold in Southeast Africa for decades, and they started getting really grumpy, and their supposed boss was deliberately using their grumpiness, their ready to mutiny, because they came to be heroes, and here they were just stuck underground. He knew that what he was going to do was to create a special species. He would call it a servant species, using genes of a local hominoid, plus the Anunnaki genes. But his first plan was to get these miners to be on the verge of a mutiny, to be ready to rebel. Because what he wanted was some genes from this amazing hominoid, Homo erectus, the ancestor of Bigfoot, that was letting animals out of traps, was able to communicate telepathically, was just such a compassionate creature. And this Lucifer, this scientist, said, if I was going to create beings, create a race or a species, I'd like him to have those qualities: telepathy and compassion. We Anunnaki sure don't seem to have much of those. And so Lucifer and his sister and son did indeed create zygotes with their genetics, their genome. With Nimma was the first carrier, and so it was her mitochondrial DNA. She carried the first of our species. But everything else was she was, the zygote had been fertilized. It was a fertilized Homo erectus egg, fertilized with genetics with the sperm from Enki and his son Lucifer. That's his other name, and his son Toth. And so they used minerals, they say, in the clay of Africa. There was something about using clay pots that gave some kind of minerals that they needed. They added copper. And so Lilith carried this first child. It was a boy, and he was authorized to be a clone master. That's what he was. His Lucifer's superiors allowed him. And so here's a little drawing that Zecharia Sitchin was able to enlarge for us. That was a bas relief. There's Thoth with the clay pot, and Lucifer. He's got some instrument in his hand, and they have just delivered the Adamu, the first Adam. He's going to be the master clone, and there's Lilith. She is holding her creation. The first woman in our species, the first boy, was incidentally dark red brown of skin. He had brown hair, kinky hair, and brown eyes. And he was just like the Anunnaki boys, except he had a foreskin, which Anunnaki children do not have. Anunnaki males do not have. They don't have foreskins. So now we get the first female. And this again was supposed to be just a clone, so that the clone Adams could have a clone Eves to have sex with, but they were just supposed to be clones. They weren't supposed to bear anything. Anyway, the first female, the master female clone, was in the wife of Lucifer. Her name was Damkina, and she gave her mitochondrial DNA to the first woman of our species, which turns out to be a sandy blonde with blue eyes. So from the get-go, our species starts out with clones. They start out as clones, one of which is this blonde girl, and one of them is this brown boy. Now, this girl was just raised as a child of Lucifer and his wife and his sister. They just loved them. And the boss, Yahweh, Enlil, said, well, bring them up from your place in Africa and bring them up next to my place. You got a place next to my place in Iraq. And so they brought their kids up. And of course, they came with Tiamat, as the first girl was called, and Adam. And they got into Lilith's garden, which was full of psychedelics and one episode. And of course, they had secretly made Tiamat fertile, but they did not let the boss know. And so it was a big deal when he comes by and he sees little Tiamat, and she's on an acid trip or whatever, MDMA trip of some kind, and she's pregnant, and she's doing this little puzzle with the table she made, and she starts chatting with him, not afraid at all, and his mind is blown. He said, you're supposed to make clones. Now this thing can breed. Get her out of here. Take her down to Zimbabwe where you have your other place and breed them. Get them out of here. And he has Enki, or Lucifer, thrown into restraints. You can see him there on the left. And the electronics, those little snakes around him, show he's in stasis. And there's the boss on the right, the guy in the middle. He's got this weapon, and he's got his son with all kinds of weapons behind him. And there's little Tiamat with her little table, and she's amazed, aghast that her daddy is being treated this way by this neighbor who just came over and being so mean. So anyway, this mean neighbor Yahweh says, okay, take these things back to Zimbabwe, and Lilith and Lucifer are glad to get their kids back and get away from the mean boss. But Lucifer knows at this point, you know what, he's going to try to keep my beautiful children dumbed down. And he starts what's called the secret snake brotherhood, where he tells selected humans that are the descendants of Tiamat and Adamu, we are not gods. We're just people. We have advanced technology. We know how to do stuff. And we're going to teach you stuff, but you can't let the boss, Yahweh, and his henchmen and his son especially know that we know all this stuff, okay? So that's the Snake Society. That's how it got started. In the meantime, the hybrids, and they were breeding, and they were having, they were working really hard and getting all the gold for the Anunnaki, and the Anunnaki are feeding them, and they get to have their own gardens. And when they're old, they get to go out in the bush and have their own lives and so forth. But everything seems to be going fine until there's something, some astronomical disturbance. Perhaps it was of the planet Nibiru coming too close when Earth was near it. But brimstones fall all over. They ruin the transshipment base for the gold on Mars. They just wipe out the crops on Earth. And the people that are working in the mines, the slaves, they go off and make their own food. They already know how. They're doing it for themselves anyway. And they stop wasting their time trying to get this yellow stuff that the big guys seem to be obsessed with. And so the boss, Yahweh, gets really down on Lucifer, the chief scientist. Make me better slaves, smarter slaves. And by smarter, he means ones that'll work hard and not complain. And so Lucifer knows just how to make them better slaves. He'll give them another genetic boost. And he finds two of the prettiest of the slaves, and he has babies with each of them. And so this is where he breeds his superior line of slaves. The boy, this is the second Adam. His real name is the Enki called him, Lucifer called him Adapa. And Lucifer taught Adapa how to run the farms, the herds, the estates, all the slaves. And basically, this Adapa was an incredible genius. He built his own spaceship. He knew how to make the wind be altered with a harp-like kind of device. He was an amazing person indeed. He was the head of a whole line. Another line of Anunnaki genes given to us was given to us by a combination of Adapa's descendants and the descendants of the astronaut corps, the Nephilim, known as the Igigi. Lucifer's son also bred the aristocracy of Egypt. He married Sarpanit, and with her his idea was to raise an army of earthlings to help him retake Nibiru, which he felt should be his. He should be the king of Nibiru, as well as to become king of Earth. So Lucifer's son, Satan, or Marduk, aligns himself with the earthlings, and his friends, who he was on Mars base with, after he goes off and with his wife, Sarpanit, they go to his place in Egypt. The astronauts grab all the girls that they want, or they had prearranged it, and they eloped. There's different versions of it. But basically, they came with their armaments, and they took the landing platform at Lebanon, and they told Yahweh, okay, our marriages, and let us settle and have lives here. We're not just going to be your shuttlers forever, or we will fight for this. And so Yahweh gives in, and the descendants of the Igigi, the Nephilim, settled in Canaan, and eventually some of them wind up in India and so forth. But that's another big incursion of genes from the Anunnaki, especially big, strong, muscular people like Goliath. He was probably one of them. So there's a later depiction of that kind of event. The people that said this was forced rape versus the people that said, no, no, they planned the whole thing. But this is the forced version, the Roman version of what came down. So we got genes from the Anunnaki. We got science from the Anunnaki too. So let's look at some of the big scientific things they gave us. They told us about astronomy. They said, you know, look, this is a sun-centered solar system, and there's planets out there beyond what you can see, but we saw them because we were coming in. And here's the relative size of them. This is way before the people that wrote this stuff down for them. The Akkadians 6,000 years ago could have knew anything about telescopes or anything. So they gave the facts of astronomy. They anthropomorphized so we could understand, but they basically said what is, and later on, thousands of years later, we find out, oh yeah, you know what, those guys were right. And what they said is that there's this other planet, Nibiru, that passes through our solar system every 3,600 years, sped up later on, and it passes between Mars and Jupiter, and you can see it in the sky, and every once in a while it comes really close to Earth, and then it might cause big disturbances. Another astronomy thing that the Anunnaki told us was that there's water on Mars, and there's water on lots of planets, and there's water in space, and our scientists only found out recently, but that's more evidence that, yeah, these guys were telling us the astronomy that they observed and that they had in their records too. They told us all kinds of stuff about geography. They said, they recorded stuff. They said there's 4 rivers that run through, come out in the Persian Gulf. And people look at that and say, oh, that's nonsense. There's only 2, the Tigris and Euphrates. But no, when they do ultrasound very recently, hey, wow, there was a river as wide as the Mississippi that's got covered up with Noah's flood. And there was another one that came from the other direction. They all came out exactly like in other words, we learned a lot about geography, even stuff that was past and no longer available from the information that the Anunnaki gave to our ancestors. They gave maps of what the landmass was like under the Antarctic ice sheet. Now, how in the world did they do that? They saw it, because when the ice sheet slid off, that's when they said there's going to be a big flood. That was probably Noah's flood. But they gave an exact map, which later explorers got passed down, which showed that this is part of the geography of the Earth. In other words, this is among the perks, the good things that the Anunnaki gave us. They gave us some real geographical knowledge. They gave us some biological knowledge. These guys could do all kinds of things with genes that we're just now learning how to do, how to combine genes, and they made useful animals like the pig and so forth. But we're doing the very same thing now. These guys were doing it from way, way back 300,000 years ago. So they gave us technology. They gave us rudimentary technology, stuff like canals and dams and plows and forges. And they gave us, intellectual systems, writing and math. They showed us stuff. Even if even if they didn't show us how to do it, they gave us the idea: power generation, electricity, lasers, sonar tools, and there's all kinds of stuff that we saw, but we didn't know how to do it. But we're pretty smart, and after a while, we figured it out. So let's look at some of those things. These are all among the good things, the perks that we got from the Anunnaki. They really showed us about land forming. They built dams and canals. After the flood, they drained the floodwaters that was just a big mess into 2 rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. And they really made the water go where they wanted it to go and do what they needed it to do. They gave us the basic tool, which is a kiln, to make bricks, and we made cities. And we transported stuff around in boats and in carts pulled by animals. And, they gave us the plow to be used, especially first people, women pulled it, and then later on animals pulled it. they showed us how power could be generated. And in their a big plant in Giza and elsewhere, the big plant they had on the Sinai, they were able, with pyramids, to use earth energy over water, which they pumped in coordination with the change in rhythm of the earth vibrations just before sunup every day, which starts this earth vibration plus the pump power over and then it goes to an explosion above that of hydrogen, which is freed for bringing up potassium and hydrochloric acid together, and all of this is amplified and sent up as an electrical kind of current out the top of the pyramid to monoliths and to their spacecraft. And so that's they didn't tell us everything, but they gave us enough information that when we got smart enough and had the tools, we can figure it out. And Dunn and others have figured it out indeed. They certainly showed us about rockets. There's lots of their accounts that showed rockets, and we've got drawings. Here's one that Sitchin was able to enlarge for us. They were showing mechanics or astronauts inside of a capsule, which is underground, with a detachable top capsule and so forth. And then we have all kinds of ancient statuettes of people in spacesuits. We also knew they had something like what we would call a computer program, master programs in their representations in their various forms throughout the planet. These guys are carrying something, which is probably a locked-in computer program. Kind of reminds you of the thing that the President of the United States carries with a button that can destroy us all. They certainly gave us the crops that we live off of and the animals that are our partners, and they gave us entheogens. They specifically sent this guy, Dumuzi, to show us how we can live with these helpful animals and grains. And they are responsible, especially Lilith, for bringing marijuana, for bringing all kinds of grains and trying all kinds of beers and wines. The Anunnaki love to party and they love to get high. They gave us the kind of social structure our mind just automatically expects. They gave us cities. They had cities managed. The cities had courts, libraries. They had schools. They had taxes. They had a city, just like we would realize it. Okay, they gave us problems too. It isn't all perks. They deliberately shortened our lifespan. Most of all, they gave us this status obsession that we're calling dominator mindset. So you get classes and rulers that are on top, people that are below that, religions that are pitted against each other. They systematically used racism, pitting races against each other. They put women down everywhere, sexism. Everywhere the Anunnaki are in charge, you get either overt slavery, sometimes it's just out and out slavery, sometimes it's drafting people, or women that are virtual slaves and so forth. And if nothing else works, they use murder, war, propaganda, ignorance, and taxes to keep their dominator mindset going. And we're going to look at some of these things that this mindset, where rulers kill to reign, everyone always competes with everyone, men boss and squelch women, and winners rule losers. And we're going to take a look at some of these problems that we've gotten from our makers. All you got to do is look at the history of any Anunnaki organized society, where there's a guy on top and people underneath, royals or dictators in their dynasties. they kill each other. They kill everybody in their family. They'll kill their populations. They'll do anything to be on top. Here I have the example of Alexander having his dad, Philip of Macedon, killed. They'll do anything to be on top. They deliberately have manipulated religions so that the people of different kinds of religions fight each other. And again, all these things are keep these different factions, these different nations, these different kingdoms, these different language groups, and these different religions opposed to each other, fighting each other, and make deals on the top so that you stay on top and that the earthlings do not get together and overthrow the Anunnaki who have never stopped running things here yet. The religions of the Anunnaki that they set up are just really based, and the rituals are based on these things that were just, here's how you're supposed to feed these guys, the guys with the guns and the rockets, and you carry them around and so forth. And it wasn't a religious thing. I mean, like, gods. These aren't people, weren't gods. They were just people, and this is getting them fed and carried around. And at one point, Prince Marduk, or Satan, had actually thought he would align himself totally with us, and he would take the earth, and he would take back Nibiru, which he felt should rightfully be his. But Yahweh bombed his communications tower. In a way, it was really symbolic because it was a launch tower. He could launch his rockets from there, but he could control communication. And in those days, communication was all over every place the Anunnaki could communicate with on the planet and elsewhere. And so when you take out his communication tower, it was like taking out the internet. And so it however you want to explain it in symbolic terms, it really was a disruption of the universal language. And so from that point on, Marduk adopted that same strategy, especially when he comes into his full authority on Earth, of pitting the different human groups against each other and not realizing who's on top. And he created this whole pageantry of what it is that a god is. And he said, and this is where everything gets confused, Prince Marduk, or Satan, started saying, I am Yahweh, I am Zeus, I am Ra, I am those are just aspects of me. And so from that point, when people start later on to make a history, it's very confusing because there's more than one person claiming to be the Yahweh or the Zeus. So let's one look at one of the basic authoritarian or dominator consciousness religion, which is Judaism. It's clearly Moses is mandating the rules that Yahweh has for humanity. When you get to Zeus, and this is Marduk, identified as the father of Alexander the Great, and he's got his own style of ruling, which is playing off everybody against everybody and keeping power, ultimate power, to himself. Another kind of problem we get from the Anunnaki is unfulfilled greed. They can never get enough. Inanna, whose life we studied quite deeply, totally did anything to get to the top. She got Lucifer drunk and got his computer programs. She killed lots of people to finally, for a little short while, got to rule the earth. The Anunnaki deliberately have shortened our lives, thinking that we wouldn't get the information to challenge them. But because we're collective, and because we're very smart, and because we can work with what each generation before us has learned, we are not far behind them. And so even though we have short lives, we are catching up. Another huge problem that they gave us that we still live with is war. These guys had thermonuclear war. Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and Dolivara were destroyed in atomic warfare in the Indus Valley. As Prince Marduk and his son were closing in from Canaan and Egypt on the Anunnaki space facilities on the Sinai, the Yahweh ordered them nuked. They were nuked in Canaan. Sodom and Gomorrah and Zoar were destroyed when the Anunnaki bombed out the south end of the Salt Sea, which became the Dead Sea, and the Sinai still has a hole in it. There's Sodom and Gomorrah and Zoar. They're just wiped out when the nuclear bombs are hit the that dam area there, and there's a hole. If you look at that real dark spot in the middle of the Sinai, where the bomb hit what was a spaceport there. The Anunnaki commander Yahweh was building another spaceport at Tiwanaku with a runway at Nazca, so he was prepared even to destroy that. But what he didn't count on is that the bombing of the Sinai and Canaan would create this incredible nuclear storm, a radioactive storm that blew all over Iraq, Sumer, where Yahweh had his place, and it killed all the humans in Sumer, in the streets. In Marduk's place, which is further north, Babylon, he was able to get his people into a fallout shelter, and Enki got his people out of the area. The Anunnaki lords fled in their boats, in their planes, but the people just died in the streets. So that was the end. The Sinai was gone. Marduk was okay. Yahweh had wiped his own self out with his inadvertently, and so it was now going to be Marduk's turn to rule, and has been right up to recently. Another prominent problem that the Anunnaki gave us from their dominant mindset is slavery. No matter how you look at it, if you're being real, you know slavery's happening. Military conscription, practiced off and on, but mostly on by most places in the world, is a form of slavery. They force people to go kill other people. That's what it is. Domestically, people still get slaves, domestic sometimes indentured servants, and many places wives are virtual slaves, subject to their husbands and everything. And the other thing in clever dominator mindset countries, people are worked just as hard as they would under any kind of slavery if they get them in the right level of debt. At least that's what you go for if you have a dominator mindset. So we're talking about the problems that the Anunnaki gave us. What are they going to do about it? Well, they pledged they're going to fix it. Their king, for a long time, his name was Anu, he said that, look, humans, not us, Anunnaki, are going to inherit the earth. So let's help them, at least give them enough knowledge so that they can live decently, so that they can be just. And when you've given them enough so that they can handle it, leave, let them have the planet. And there's his words. Mankind, not Anunnaki, to inherit the earth is destined. Let us destiny help. Give mankind knowledge up to a measure. Give mankind the secrets of heaven and earth. Teach mankind the laws of justice and righteousness. Then leave. Well, who left? Well, most of them left, but some stayed. Prince Marduk stayed. His 300 loyal guys stayed. And Anu pondered this situation on Earth that kept getting worse and worse because Nana, or Allah, had started sending his agents back to Earth to start Islam going and to challenge Marduk. And so it was just an untenable war about these princes. So Anu said, everybody, I want all of you royals to come back to Nibiru, and I'm going to lift the ban I had on Marduk so we can all come too. And let's see if we can. I'm going to abdicate. I want you to help me choose a successor. So he had everybody come first except Marduk, and he gave them all good jobs. And so they were all on his side. Then here comes Marduk with his 300 people. And as soon as he gets off, he doesn't bow the knee to Anu, the king. Instead, he said, I am here to take my kingship. Bow the knee to me. I am the righteous king of Nibiru. By treaty you signed. And Anu said, you snip. I got to kill you on this. You aren't going to kill anybody. My 300 guys are here. Got it? Well, you just cool it. You go stay over there for a while and think about it. We'll talk to you one by one. Well, after a while, just send him home. Let him have her. So he came home. Marduk and his 300 guys came home. They organized everything going. They kept killing off the agents of Nanar, and Marduk starts claiming he's the hidden head. He's the hidden head of a committee of 300 kings of the world and an inside council of 12. He runs the different religions, the trigger states, the economic blocks, the different military and mafia arrangements. He is basically in with the power people and the oil people. He's running everything and pretending that they're separate and independent, but they're all being coordinated so none of them get powerful enough to realize that behind them, most of them, is Marduk and the guys that work with Marduk. However, the royals say they've returned to end the rivalries that Marduk has perpetrated, that he's through, that he's now committed to ending this bad time that we've been having, this Kali Yuga. And it's time for his father, Aquarius, Enki, Lucifer otherwise, to have his time on earth when there's harmony and understanding and sympathy and love abound. I sure hope there's no more bad times. And even Marduk says he's indeed very sorry. And he had to cause us suffering so that we would get to the point of understanding, so that we can create an artificial intelligence to mediate what we need to do to clean up the planet and have peace and get along, and that he's going to make up for all the suffering he caused, and that he felt he had to do it, and it was his destiny, and he'll make up for it. We shall see. Other people, modern Anunnaki, tell us, indeed, help is here. It's really here. Thoth Neith has said directly that her uncle Thoth, Jesus is here also. He's one of the Anunnaki, she says. And the peacemaker, Michael Lee Hill, who embodies Anunnaki consciousness, especially the aspect that's tied in with the native peoples of North America, says the same thing, that, yeah, the times that we're going through right now are all part of the transition where we realize our oneness, and peace will rule the planet and love will guide our stars. Do hope so.